Yep, good morning everyone, and we are now live for today's panel discussion, Future of Health Tech. Let me just quickly pull up my introduction slide as we introduce the speakers for today. So for today, we have Dr. Zubin, which is the health industry leader from PwC, as well as Prof. Jeremy Lim, the director of the Leadership Institute for Global Health Transformation. And lastly, we also have Mr. Teo, the director of NHIC. So for today's panel discussion, I can go through roughly what we are going to cover as the participants and audience slowly stream in. And for today, we actually be talking about some of the pain points in the healthcare arena and how health tech can actually come in to, in a sense, support and transform the entire healthcare scene as well. And we will also talk about some of the projected trends in the healthcare space and how our participants can actually get involved and really and prepare themselves to enter the healthcare sector. Yeah. So with that, let's just get the ball rolling with a very general question directed to perhaps anyone on the panel can take the question. So I think for our hackathon, what our participants are really trying to do is to find some of the challenges or problems that they see in various disease states, be it mental disorders, be it diabetes, or be it physical disabilities. So this question is just to kind of give them a hint as to what are some problems they can actually tackle. So to the panelists, what do you think are some of the current challenges in the healthcare arena that can be tackled by health tech specifically? Perhaps Mr. Teo can kickstart with the sure. Sorry, Zubin, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead. Cher Hwa, if you'd like to start, happy to chip in. Otherwise, either way.
Okay, probably I will start first. Yeah, I think when we talk about like health tech, right? It mean really a lot of different areas, right? If you talk about health tech as a digitization or digital health itself, as we are now going into the age of digitization and transformation on that, I believe that you can see that there's so many things that now has changed. You can see that people are starting to get accepted a little bit into telehealth, right, or teleconsultation. And we get the ministry is also accepting that as one modality of doing medical consultation on that. So that is something that what digitization were able to do. Tele rehab is also kicking right now. So that's something also that we are working towards it. Moving forward, there will be things like where if you talk about digitization, there will be some can be done or some can't. So we will most likely end up in some kind of like hybrid mode when we talk about health tech. But health tech, I believe that it encompasses really a lot of other things, right? It includes things like we also keep on putting in, because some of the definition are not really that clear when we talk about health tech. It can mean by biotech, pharmaceutical itself. It can also mean medical technology, medical device area, or even what just now I did mention on digital health. So seriously, I believe that whether it is pharmaceutical area, biotech, medtech, or digital health, we are all having that big change that is moving forward. So the acceptance of transformation and what the ministry or the Ministry of Health in Singapore was pushing to getting the three beyonds and getting individual to take care of your own health as a prevention rather than doing as a treatment. That will be something that may change how the way that we look in health tech as a whole. Yeah.
Yep.
Can I just add to that possibly, Wei Jian? So I think while Cher Hwa has given some specifics on digital health and health tech, I think maybe I'll come at it from a bit of a higher level. So you asked what kind of health tech can do. I think broadly speaking, I often use this term clinical utopia, where I believe that we should all be working towards providing affordable, accessible, and quality care to everybody. And I think that's where health tech can play a role. So, for example, Cher Hwa talked about telehealth or tele-rehab just as one example. Using that modality that can address accessibility, because if you think about it, even in emerging markets or developing economies where infrastructure may not be as good as the more developed countries, rural access is allowed because there is mobile penetration. You can get various forms of technology out in the rural areas. So that addresses affordability, just as one example. So I think that's broadly speaking how I look at it.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Zubin. Actually, I do agree with what you mentioned previously during an interview with the C-suite partners as well. You mentioned that you have always believed in using technology to complement clinical practice instead of replacing them. So I think I would just direct this question to perhaps Prof. Jeremy building on to whatever we have discussed so far. From a policy standpoint, from a public health standpoint, how do you foresee health tech coming to, in a sense, complement the healthcare sector? Yeah.
Really, I don't think there are technological challenges. To be brutally upfront, a lot of the difficulties in technology adoption are really man-made. And here, I think COVID-19 presents a glorious opportunity to really force through a lot of initiatives that have been waiting in the sidelines for a long time. Right? If we look at healthcare versus other sectors, financial services, consumer, and really so on, it's very clear that health is a laggard. Right? The difficulty has been that nothing really can fully substitute for an in-person consultation with a well-skilled doctor there giving you their undivided really attention. That's completely the gold standard, but as Zubin pointed out, that's an unrealistic gold standard for the vast majority. And here, I think, given COVID and the necessary constraints, there's an opportunity to force through. And maybe many of the participants are not old enough to remember, but once upon a time, banking was largely done in person. And the banks then introduced these automated tellers or ATMs. And what did they do to encourage ATM adoption? They closed branches. So it became a heck of a lot more difficult to see an in-person, to do banking on a face-to-face or an in-person basis. When I was in the US, I was amazed that I was even charged for an in-person banking encounter. Right? I said, but I'm here to put money in. Say, why are you charging me? Say, oh no, you can put money in the machine outside, then you don't need to pay. But if you come in here, you got to pay $20. So so that forcing function, I would believe, is increasingly necessary. And after people get used to it, then they realize that wow, it's actually much more convenient, and the freed up resource, as Zubin pointed out, can then expand access where technological solutions are less available.
Yep, understand. Actually, on this note, you mentioned an important or rather interesting concept in the sense that it involves mind shifts. The shift in mindset. So from to the panelists, from your experience and from your observation, right? How can we better facilitate this shift, especially when it comes to the older demographic, the elderly, where they are? I might be stereotyping, but they might be slightly more resistant as compared to the younger generation to pick up technology in a sense. Yeah.
Can I respond to that, Wei Kian?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I wanted 2 points. So first of all, I agree with you. I think you're stereotyping, and I think it's important because if you think about it, I also used to feel that the elderly would probably not want to adopt technology or would have difficulties. If you look around today, there are many elderlies, grandparents, great grandparents who are using iPads, iPhones, wearables to look at pictures of their grandkids and communicating with them. So I think the first thing is we should get rid of stereotyping and bias. Okay.
Yeah.
The other point, I just wanted to reiterate what Jeremy said. I think actually, if anything at all from the message is what Jeremy said, that it is not a technology problem. It is a people problem. all these technologies, whether it's health tech, fintech, or other industries, these are nothing new. You know, if you read about telesurgery or teleanesthesia, you can read articles from the Lancet from decades ago. Nothing that we see today, or almost nothing that we see today, is truly new. So it is about changing those mind shifts. And I don't think there's any easy answer for that. Jeremy alluded to one, forcing. So whether you implement policies or actions by organizations to force users to adopt those technologies, maybe that's one way. But I think how I look at it is it comes from the top. It must come from the top, whether it's government, whether it's a private organization. At leadership level, this idea must be advocated and start to spread down. That's, I think, where it starts. But happy to hear my colleagues chip in on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
probably I also wanted to talk about something that what Zubin just mentioned is that even though you did we says that you should not stereotype, but seriously under the so-called the older population, there is also really two big groups. One can accept technology and the other one can't accept technology, right? So no matter how, we should see how do we able to get the other side, which is those which are not accepting technology, and convert them. You know, talk about just simple as vaccination itself, right? We have a pool of older generation where the government now are keep on pushing them to get themselves vaccinated, right? It is not easy to convert them, you know, and we need to have somebody there to help them to convert that. And the government is really doing very much on such a thing, on getting them to accept technology. So even though we say that no, we should not stereotype, but something has to be done in order to get the older generation or older population to help them embrace technology. And seriously, I do also agree that what Zubin and Jeremy mentioned is that technology seriously is not the problem. And we should not use that as a roadblock or to say that that is the issue. But we should take a look at it as how do we able to change some of the mindset, right? The older population definitely would like to have the gold standard to be in consultation and things like that. Who don't want to, right? It's better to see a person, right, rather than to see it over online or digital way. But nevertheless, I think technology has really enhanced all this thing happening. So let's see what we can do, and we should find ways. And if we were to say what is health tech and what can we do, is seriously how do we able to develop something at the same time also able to change the mindsets of people and help them to embrace technology. Yeah.
Sorry, Cher Hwa, but I don't fully agree with you. I think the government is doing a pathetically soft job, both in embracing health tech adoption as well as in encouraging seniors to be vaccinated. Even short of legislative mandates, there are so many things that can be done. For example, if we talk about health tech, if a teleconsultation is available the next day for $5, but an in-person consult is 3 months down the road for $100, adoption will be much faster.
No,
Right?
definitely agree.
but we're not clever about it, right? And we don't recognize that different tools, that the different technologies or the different modalities are appropriate to different settings. A teleconsult for a first visit may be inappropriate for a complex patient, but a teleconsultation with really adjunct monitoring devices may be eminently suitable for a routine follow-up. So, right? But as long as we are stuck in this policy mental block of a one-size-fits-all, we will never be able to make significant progress because we're just not sophisticated enough. And here, sorry, Cher Hwa, but given yesterday's announcement of return to phase 2 heightened alert, I would say that the government's response has been singularly disappointing.
Maybe can I also just add in something there? While I think we could definitely do a lot better, Jeremy, I want to actually challenge something you just mentioned.
Yes, please.
On first consults, I think even as clinicians ourselves, like you and I are, Jeremy, I actually think sometimes a teleconsult can, and I say this because I've been doing this for 9 years, right?
Yep.
Teleconsults can actually be as good as a physical consult. Now, not as default, please don't get me wrong,
Yep.
but I think there are situations where you're still face to face, you see the person, you speak, you're not typing, you're not writing notes. And as I think you will agree with, in clinical medicine, we're always taught that 90% of the diagnosis is made on a history alone, a good history. And so even last week, I had a first consult with a colleague's family member who found it difficult to reach out physically to a clinic or hospital, and made a diagnosis, at least a working diagnosis of a cancer, unfortunately, and then managed that person very efficiently, sent them to the right doctor. So I think one of the mindsets that also needs to change is that of clinicians and even the policymakers. Sometimes the policies are just too stringent. I think we need to give autonomy to the clinicians and other users of all these technologies, just not just the patients, and trust that people will make the right decisions and be responsible. At the end of the day, as a clinician, when I conduct a teleconsult, my threshold is a lot lower than a physical consult in what I will do. But at the end of the day, if I make sure I practice safely, I practice ethically, I think sometimes the results can be just the same. So I think that also needs to change.
No, and really, Zubin, I'm on the same page with you. I think there's no one size fits all, and that we have to be circumspect. And to your point that there's almost infinite variety. Therefore, you have to trust the people on the ground, the clinicians, the doctors, the pharmacists, the nurses, to have the good sense to do the right thing. The unfortunate reality is that we are in Singapore, which is a low trust society where the government genuinely has grave concerns about trusting people to do the right thing unless you're a KTV operator. So it's just how do you say? And it's not an intellectual concern, right? It's more a really emotional challenge where you're asking elite policymakers to say, trust the common man, trust the guy on the ground to do the right thing. I mean, that's also why we have these safe distancing rules that two persons can eat, but if you're on the same family, it's still you have to split tables and all this, because we just don't trust that people will make the appropriate declarations. So I really come back to the fundamental point that everyone has reinforced. It's not the technology, it's the mindset. And the mindset drives the policies and the appetite to be innovative.
Yeah. Actually, on this note, I just want to say to the participants as well, because at the end of the day, we don't want everything to just be four of us talking. If the participants or attendees have any questions, feel free to send in the chat as well. If you would like to have a face-to-face talk, I mean virtually, with our speakers, feel free to raise your hand also. And actually, just to rewind a little, based on what the panelists say, right? From what I heard is that there is always this conflict between implementing something or enforcing something from a top-down approach when it comes to government policy or enforcement. But at the same time, what can our participants then do from a bottom-up approach, in a sense that some of them might be aspiring entrepreneurs in the health tech industry, when it comes to increasing uptake and really making it something making health tech something that is more common, commonly accepted. What can they do, as individuals?
Uh, okay, maybe let me just we'll start the ball rolling in what you shouldn't do. Number one, please don't focus on Singapore as the prime market. If you do that, forget about it. Please go and join the government. Life is going to be better. Second thing is find a good team, right? Health tech is incredibly complex. You need the technology and you need the health probably in equal measure. It is tightly regulated, and these statistics are very, very clear that really health tech companies with senior founding teams, people with 10, 20 years in the industry, do a heck a lot better than really freshies. So, and I guess that's the nature of how challenging the health tech sector is. So please don't be a hero, because heroes die young, right? And find that and find the right team to start. And the good thing, and I'll hand over the time to my esteemed fellow panelists. The good thing about healthcare is that problems are replete. There's so many problems that you can almost have your choice of which ones you want to tackle. Zubin, Cher Hwa?
I just have one thing that is always a peeve of mine when I see technology solutions, not just in health tech, and Jeremy's kind of touched on it. Identify the right problem, and once you do, go and validate it before you spend time, money, getting other people, building a team. Because in my experience, I would dare to say the majority of solutions that I see in early stage, and sometimes, and this is the worrying part, even in mid and later stage, just have not identified the right problem. And I'm sure you've heard the phrase, don't be a hammer looking for a nail, right? Because if you are, everything's going to look like a nail to you, right? Um, just identify the right problem. Spend time speaking to the right people, not just clinicians, but actual people who are facing that problem, and ask them, is this really a problem? And if it is it also really worth solving? A lot of time and money will be saved. Cher Hwa, I don't know if you have any other ideas.
Yeah, I think you guys has covered what typically we will also talk to a lot of people when they are budding entrepreneurs, wanted to do innovations in all this area, right? So we always say that there's 3 P's, right? This 3 P's is not the marketing piece where we talk about all the marketing thing, but seriously here we talk about still the people that what Jeremy mentioned, find the correct people, the right team. It is people that make it happen. It is not really the technology, to be very frank, right? So look for the correct team, look for the correct people. What Zubin mentioned, problem. Yes, identify the correct problem, right? You don't really, if there's no problem, why do you want to change it, right? So that is where is it. So identify the correct problem. So that the last P that we always have is that try to go and do and try and test out your prototype your things, right? Go and along change it, right? There to go and make changes, optimize. You fail, learn from mistake, do it again, right? And then repeat the same old thing, right? Work, find the correct people, do the correct, address the correct problem, and then go and dare to test it out, prototyping it. So that is what I can advise, and we typically see that happens, on and on until when seriously there is something. When you talk about right market, that what Jeremy mentioned, yes, definitely, don't focus just on Singapore. Singapore is not a market at anyway, right? We are just too small, right? And our healthcare system is seriously very interesting. We are hybrid of everything, right? And we are unique in some way or other. And how our healthcare system came about also totally is that because of there's various other reasons that involve political, how we actually grow up as an island by itself, and things like that. So don't really just target on just Singapore alone. If you are going to do that, then it is seriously a doomsday for you. Yeah.
Maybe Cher Hwa, can I add?
Sorry,
Please,
Jeremy.
please.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to add one more P, which is payment. For heaven's sakes, make sure that you build something that people are
Somebody
prepared to pay for. And for all the budding entrepreneurs, I speak as an investor and also as a startup founder. Don't expect doctors to pay for anything. We are damn cheap. Okay, we've been spoiled by the pharmaceutical companies and device companies to expect everything to be given to us free. And you should be glad that the doctors don't charge you to sell products for them. The second thing is that patients also generally don't pay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, the patients who most need technological adjuncts are the ones with the least willingness and the least ability to pay. So whatever you do have a line of sight to a viable payment model. And over to you, Zubin.
Yeah, no, I didn't think of it as a P. I was going to say reimbursement, but you've covered that. But the second thing, Wei Chen, given the audience are mainly students here, do not be worried of failing. Okay, Cher Hwa talked about proof of concept. Try again, make sure you succeed. I think this is one big problem I see in Singapore more than any other country. failure here is often frowned upon. Actually, I look at it the other way. Also, in different capacities, as a clinician, as someone who's been involved in health tech for a while, I actually would rather invest in somebody who has failed multiple times and then has an idea that I believe, after doing my own due diligence, is a good one. Because you learn a lot of lessons from failure, right? They say failure is the runway to success. So in the Singapore context, to all of you guys out there, don't be afraid of failing. And if you do fail, be proud of it, just as long as you have learned some lessons. Thanks.
Yeah, I totally agree with the four P's that I mentioned previously. Actually, just zooming on into one of them, which is the problem. Just want to ask, in a sense, I think not just in a Singapore's kind of setting, but from a macro scale, perhaps worldwide, globally. In terms of digital health initiative, what are some overarching trends that perhaps our panelists have observed when it comes to, perhaps, is there a specific disease state or demographic that is getting kind of more traction in, or is it like a specific, for example, modality that is getting more attention in? Yeah.
Uh, Maybe let me start the ball rolling. Firstly, there's a heck a lot of money running into healthcare. Most of it is stupid money. Okay, so if you are so take stupid money at your own folly, because it will come back to be very painful. Secondly, anything that is related to tele whatever, you'll at least get the first meeting. Mental health is very, very hot. If you throw in AI and machine learning and the other buzzwords, you'll also become
Deep
more
learning,
really
deep tech, deep
popular.
learning,
Yes,
deep
and
tech.
deep learning. So all these buzzwords they are in flavor, but the problem is that the average health tech company takes 6 to 10 years to actually mature. So you have to live beyond the hype. Right, the hype is a great time to raise money, right? And I build upon what Zubin said earlier. Don't be embarrassed to raise money with idea one. 6 months later, find it was actually a pretty stupid idea, and then pivot and change, right? And change until you have it figured out. Yeah, but I would say that the nice thing is that health is really, really hot now. If we look at valuations, you look at the amount of money pouring in, there's a lot of opportunity to really try things.
I think I want to add on just on the problem itself is that seriously, just now what we mentioned about AI, physicians, medicine, whatever, AI related to deep learning, tele, all the tele thing. Wow, it is going to be hot. Currently, there's lots of money out there that you can actually push and get yourself raised for your startup. But just one advice is that don't go and feel that you own the problem, right? If you get associated and too close and says that you own the problem and you keep it to yourself, there's no way that you can push out and get people to help you to validate it, right? And there is really so much things out there. So that is one thing. Then the second thing here is that don't be too I say protective about your idea too. You have to talk to people in order to make sure that your things really, really works, or else you can't proceed further on that. So whether what kind of things that is hot, frankly, even those not hot things, yes, you may not be easy to raise money, but if you're able to address correctly and get all this, your stakeholder to validate it, and everybody says yes to it, yes, you should just go, go there to try it, go there to push and raise money for your startup itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Wei and I agree with both Cher Hwa and Jeremy. The only thing I would add is say, number one, I always say focus on value rather than valuation. If you focus on value, you will always find somewhere, someone, some organization who will support that, whether it's a rare disease or something very common. So I wouldn't be too enamored by the flavor of the day or the flavor of the week or the flavor of the month. Just focus on identifying the right problem. If you've identified the right problem and you have a solution that is cost effective or cost neutral but has an improved outcome, you will find somewhere to fund it.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, at the end of the day, it's always doing beyond the hype and having something that is more sustainable as well. Actually, on this note, we have a question from the floor. Let me just show you on stage. This question is directed to Mr. Teo. So, hi, Mr. Teo. Given your work at NHIC, what is the current state of healthcare innovation in Singapore, and how can tech help in Singapore transition towards a community health model?
Yep. Yeah, thanks for the question. Very good and interesting question. Yes, I think if you would, for my view, when we talk about healthcare innovation right now in Singapore, I think it is really the best time to really do it. You know, because why? Government, you can see that now innovation is a buzzword everywhere, whether at political end, whether at the healthcare end, whether at whatever industry, everybody are talking about innovation. So not just healthcare itself, right? So if you wanted to really get yourself into the innovation kind of works, right? I think this is really the best time because, and furthermore, at healthcare, even at NHIC, we are very supportive about bringing getting clinician involved together with the technology providers or the technology guys to work out what is the kind of innovation that can help to solve their clinical problems, right? So this is seriously, if you were to ask me what is the current stage, if I wouldn't use the word, at what state they are in, but to get into healthcare innovation, this is the best time because there's money out there. There is people that are concerned with it. There's people that or most of the stakeholders wanted to do it. The government is also supportive. There is lots of government money that you can also tap from, right? So I would, if you were to want to involve in such a kind of things, get on the bandwagon and do it, right? How is tech really can help in Singapore in transiting to community health? I believe that as we just mentioned, right? Seriously, technology is not the barrier. And whatever technology, if you can solve the correct problem, right, and address it, you can really help it. So there's no such thing whether technology can do what. It can do lots of things, right? And furthermore, when you goes into community health, right, that is more important that technology really can help it. You can already see that what we have in all the tele something thing, right? The tele X thing, like whether it's teleconsult, tele rehab, things are moving, right? And what Jeremy did mention is that probably thanks to COVID, that we actually fastened the whole entire transformation and acceptance of the technology. But I believe so that this is not going to go away, right? And digitization is not going to go away. So whatever technology that can help to solve your problems or to solve the problems that you have identified and validated, that is the way to go. There's no real what kind of technology. So technology is just a solution to it. It's just one of the many factors. But as I said, that ultimately get the correct people, right, to do it too. That is very much important. Yeah.
Yeah, Prof. Jerry. Yeah.
If I can add on, and I'll double triple click on what Cher Hwa said. The specific comment around community care, it's really around two things, right? And thankfully, Singapore has been quite good in the marketing with the 3 Beyonds. So anything that helps people to be healthy, right? And here, Singapore is very, very keen to enable people to be healthy digitally and also at scale. So if you look at the Apple and health promotion board, Lumi Health, and really decompose it into parts around activity, mental health, sleep, diet, and so on. Anything that allows or enables people to make it easier to be healthy, then you're in the right place. The other beyond hospital to really community, I think is salient not just in Singapore but also globally, because and with or without COVID, the hospital is the most expensive and often the highest risk place to be treated unless absolutely necessary. Hospitals are expensive and they're full of bad bugs, not just COVID. So how then do you enable care to be delivered safely in a community setting, and that's where technology can really make this quantum leap. But it's a slow process because the issues are not technological, as we alluded to. It's really around people. It's really around policy.
Yep, understand. Oh, and yeah, I just wanted to say just now, Dr. Zubin's connection might have been disconnected, but now he's
I'm
back.
back.
Yeah, yeah. So just to fill Dr. Zubin in, we are just talking about the question from the floor and how Singapore can transition into a community health model, especially in the context of technology. Actually, on this note, I have a question. Just to push the boundaries a little bit. When it comes to Singapore healthcare system, what would you think? Is a state, or rather, where do you think Singapore is in the whole spectrum of the adoption of digital health? Are we like falling behind, or are we the pioneers, or are we somewhere in the middle? Yeah, just want to get your thoughts on it. Yeah.
Who are you asking first, Wei Chen?
Sorry.
Who are you asking first?
Sure, Dr. Zubin, you can get the ball rolling. Yeah.
I definitely do not think that we are in front or leading. I think we are somewhere in the middle, and I would dare to say, if we compare ourselves to some countries, we might even be far behind. So I think we've got a long way to go. Jeremy touched on the issue of trust. I think generally, not just the government, but by organizations themselves, even by clinicians themselves, sometimes we don't trust some of these new technologies, and that's a big problem. I can see why. As a practicing clinician, I often wonder, it is concerning. Why would we accept a technology that tells us, for example, an X-ray has this diagnosis? Not many people understand, how technology works, how it was validated. So I think on the clinical validation front, we my colleagues Jeremy and Cher Hwa on this.
Please, Cher Hwa, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I think me sitting at NHIC, yeah, we kind of like sandwich between what we are supporting, how the government pushing in terms of policy for innovation, as well as what is the ground that is looking for innovation. And right, we seriously are trying ways to see that how are we getting ourselves able to adopt all this new innovation. We are struggling, to be very frank. Yeah, it's not an easy task. Yeah. So I totally agree with what Zubin mentioned, is that seriously, we are not really the forerunner in terms of when we talk about really technology. There's lots of room for improvement, but we have improved, right? We have improved. So you can see how the way that we have approached things, and how the way we have trying to address. I can dare to tell you that even right at the hospital setting itself, we are trying ways to see how we can really adopt our own innovation that coming out from Singapore. Again, here we have to address a lot of other issues where we talk about a lot of things like what we mean by conflict of interest, because the one that we develop where we have our clinicians inside, having clinicians validating their own technologies, having clinicians buying back their own technologies and use it on their own patients. These are just a little bit glimpse of what the kind of difficult problems that we are going to solve when we talk about adoption. But that is only one of the many factors that we are talking about. But having to say that is that yes, there's lot of room that we can still go and push for technologies to being adopted in our healthcare system. Yeah.
Maybe guys, let me describe the dark clouds first and then the silver lining. The dark clouds, if we look back to the raw ingredients needed for a successful and thriving innovation ecosystem, Singapore has everything, right? We've got a small, compact population that is pretty stable. And if you do clinical trials in China, you know that you start with 100, 1 week later you're down to 70. So we have a small, compact population. We are pretty wired up. We have a almost monolithic public healthcare system that is the dominant provider. So we've got a lot of the raw ingredients that, hand on heart, we have squandered. Okay, we have probably wasted the last 15 years being paralyzed by inactivity and not being able to overcome the issues that Teo Cher Hwa had mentioned. We're also still fixated on this Pinkerton syndrome that if it's invented by one of our local guys, it cannot be good. There must be something that the Ang Moh is doing better. So we essentially constrain ourselves, which is not helpful. But the silver linings are, firstly, that number one, I think we are achieving critical mass. Enough clever people want to focus on solving healthcare problems. Secondly, COVID has amply demonstrated and created a lot of momentum. And thirdly, if you look at government spending on healthcare, and the government is concerned about many things, but money is foremost, right? And many of our young friends in the audience may not have noticed, but 2021 was the first year ever in history that the health ministry's budget was larger than the defense ministry's budget, right? And that's not something that the government is, how shall we say, happy to see. So there's a lot of momentum and political willingness to change things. The difficulty then, if we pull the dark clouds and the silver lining, is what is the path to be truly innovative, right? And that's where a lot of the stakeholder management becomes important, because let's just say civil servants don't get promoted because they were innovative. They get promoted if they don't do anything stupid and someone else does. So it's a bit like Survivor. As long as you outlast, you outlive, pretty soon you look and say, wow, these are the only guys left, so we have to promote you. So that mental model will need to adjust also.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned one point that I actually wanted to ask as well, and that is on stakeholders. So in the Singapore context, I think from the discussion in the past 40 minutes, I get the impression that government seems to be one of the biggest stakeholder that anyone who is aspiring to have a startup should look at. But other than that, at the same time, I also know that at the end of the day, as much as you want to be in line with the government's policy and everything like that, are there any other stakeholders that health tech startups should actually pay more attention to, especially from a greater scale of things? Like you mentioned previously that Singapore might be too small of a market to really go big, for example. And yeah, so in this context, what would be your thoughts on it? Is it that everyone should be government pleasing, or like is it should be something like that? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Can I just respond to that very quickly?
Hmm.
I don't agree with you, Wei Chen. Why would you say that the government is the biggest stakeholder?
No, yeah. So, sorry,
go
let me just
Yeah.
clarify myself. I'm not suggesting that it is. I'm just posing the question in a sense that when it comes to healthcare initiatives, a lot of times you might see a lot of public health campaign that is being rolled out from a nationwide scale. So I'm just trying to think in terms of like a startup budding entrepreneur kind of perspective. How then can we not in a sense opposing what is already happening, but rather how can we tap on the current wave and tap on the current trend to kind of ride the wave in a sense. Yeah.
I think I would actually answer this very simply and say it comes back to how Cher Hwa described the 4 Ps. And for me, from a clinical and perspective and from a business perspective, I think the 2 biggest stakeholders, and maybe my colleagues will disagree with me on this. Number one, I think the biggest stakeholder must be the patient. Always the patient. Whatever we do in health tech, whether it's in the pharma space, medtech space, provider space, it's always ultimately the patient who is the end user. So the biggest stakeholder is the patient. And then the second biggest stakeholder, when people think about solutions, comes back to what Jeremy said, is the payment, or I said reimbursement. If you haven't figured out who's going to pay for it, why they're going to pay for it, how they're going to pay for it, it's going to be a big problem. So the second biggest stakeholder, and the way I look at it, is who's going to pay. So the reimbursers, whether it's the insurer or whoever. So that's how I look at it. Two things. But happy if my colleagues disagree or agree.
Maybe Cher Hwa, you want to chime in?
Okay. Probably let me also talk a little bit. I have almost a similar view, but I will pace it in a very different way. I would say is that look at it to say that look at your state of development of your startup or your ideas or your problems or whatever. At different stage, you have different stakeholder that is placed in higher priority than the others, right? So if you talk about like if you are gearing towards a regulatory or regulated product or regulated angle kind of treatment, right? Indication for use, then at that stage when you are looking into that, probably the regulatory authority is one of the major stakeholder, for example, right? And if you are solving your problems, right, then you should look at the patient as the major highest priority stakeholder. So look at your stage of development, right? Then you place your priority according to the stage of development. And if you want to talk about general as a whole, I would say that all are seriously at equal standing. There is no one that is higher than the other. But you look at your own development. You have to change your priority as you move on your stage of innovation, right? When you want to develop that. I can't imagine that you keep on hanging on to putting government as the main one and hopefully things are moving on, right? Because you may be focusing at different things at different stage of your work. Yeah.
Maybe Wei Tian, let me be contrarian. I don't agree with Zubin that the patient is the most important, and at least here in Singapore, patients have no voice. Let us be realistic, right? He who pays the piper will ultimately call the tune.
Jeremy, sorry, are you saying they aren't or they shouldn't be? Because I think they should. I don't disagree with you. That
yeah. I am saying that they should be, but realistically they are not. Here and especially here in Singapore, where the patient population may be numerically large, but is very fragmented and by design have limited voice. Right, so a lot of patient groups are really pastoral, service oriented rather than looking at policy, looking at advocacy. So maybe I do sound somewhat capitalist, but follow the money for heaven's sakes, right? Who can sign the checks? And here is really the payers of healthcare, the large healthcare providers, whom a lot of money goes through, and any instrument or any technological innovation that allows them to save a couple of percentage points will be well received. And also the pharmaceutical companies, because the reality is that pharmaceutical companies do make a lot of money as long as people live long enough and take a lot of their medicines. And since the starting point globally, the really statistics are that half of prescriptions are not filled. So if everyone who is hypertensive took their medicines the way they were supposed to, then there is sufficient volume. There is a business case to be made. So really, I cannot overemphasize that following the money for a startup is important. Following the cause and doing what is right is important. If you're a charity, if you can find that sweet spot where you do the right thing, you are well paid for it, then really all power to you. Maybe just a small point about the government, and very practically here in Singapore, the government is single-handedly the largest provider. You add up the three clusters and you add all the NGOs that are very closely linked to the government is overwhelmingly the largest provider. It's also the largest payer, both directly through subsidies and also indirectly through permitting what MediSave and MediShield Life can and cannot be used for. And it's also the regulator. So the government in Singapore is fairly unique in that if it wants things to happen, it can make things happen very, very quickly through any of the levers that we had discussed earlier. This is different from many other countries where a lot of technology startups succeed because the government fails, because governments are not providing a service that people deem to be essential or important enough that they are willing to pay for. So the Singapore context is a little bit different, but that said, it's still a nice place to pilot and test things, but your real markets are outside Singapore.
Yep, definitely agree. Actually, I think my biggest takeaway from just now the round of questions and answers is definitely like the fact that and I mean I can kind of appreciate the beauty of healthcare in a sense that on one hand, money is involved. It is kind of like a business, but and on the other hand, we cannot take our eyes off the patients, which is at the end of the day what we are trying to achieve, or rather the audience that we're trying to target. So at the end of the day, I think it's really what Cher Hwa and Jeremy mentioned, on finding the sweet spot and the balance between ensuring that the company, the business can still operate without losing sight of what is important and what kind of drove our participants or like the entrepreneurs to really take a step into the healthcare entrepreneurship field to begin with. On this note, actually, there's another question by Ian. Let me just show you on screen. Given the complexities of the healthcare tech, multiple layers of regulations, a close-knit, some might say close-off medical community, how do outsiders to the medical community find the right people to pitch and convince in what appears to be a huge maze? Yeah, perhaps we can let Dr. Zubin to take this question first. Yeah.
Sorry, can you just repeat that, Wei Jian?
Let me show you on stage once again. To summarize, essentially, I think Ian was asking how can like for example an outsider without I assume much of a clinical practice background, perhaps from other sectors, find the right people to pitch their ideas, especially given the complexities of the health tech sector. Yeah.
There were the Edge, I think yesterday, put out a nice post on LinkedIn. The startup ecosystem in Singapore is really, really vibrant. I think we've improved tremendously. So there is no shortage of people on the investor side, on the founder side, on even the institutional side, organizations, whether it's NHIC government or private organizations. You simply need to reach out to people. And if you do a little bit of research online, you're going to know who the active people are. I mean, there are loads of active people in Singapore in the health tech startup ecosystem. Just reach out to them and ask them, hey, can I share an idea? Can I get some advice? People are really willing to help. That's at least what I've seen in my experience. I don't know if Cher Hwa and Jeremy agree.
Jeremy, any comments on that?
Couple of quick comments. One, absolutely right. It is a closely knit, and I hate to sound chauvinistic, old boys club. So if you're not in the club, then sorry, life is just going to be very difficult. So realistically, how then do you get into the club or get close enough to the club that you can be effective? And in fairness, many healthcare professionals spend years honing their craft, getting to know where everything is. So there's a natural tendency to be unfriendly to outsiders, and in particular, the outsiders who come in and say, "Well, you guys are damn screwed up. I have the solution for you." Almost the surest way to stimulate a type 1 allergic reaction. So that's if I name one specific company, or let me name two. Some of you will be familiar with the company Hallmark that was founded by a former McKinsey guy who was in financial, right? And he was smart enough to get healthcare people, very deep healthcare people, to buy into the vision. And these very deep healthcare people, including myself, then helped to open the doors. And to Nawal Roy's credit, after about 100 meetings, he managed to crack and break into healthcare where some of the large healthcare clusters were prepared to share data with him. Another company that I can name would be really Jagami, which was founded by a person who was not in the healthcare sector, had an experience with his grandmother, right, and decided that he had to contribute to a better way. And again, he didn't knock his head against a brick wall. Instead, he went out to look for advisors, to assemble a team of people who could help him to open doors and really get into the hospitals, the community care organizations. So the reality is that you just got to find the right hook to get in. And if you cannot, then you really have to consider, is your hook the wrong one? Are you the wrong one? Or maybe you should just find your future somewhere else.
Yep. Probably
Sorry, so just what Jeremy just said there, which comes again. Have you identified the right problem? Because if you really have identified the right problem, someone will come and support you and help you.
Yep, totally agree. Cher Hwa, anything to add on?
Yeah, but looking at the question, I found that it looks like it's a very, I will use the word a little bit like a pessimistic question. But I want to say that is that take a relook at the question and says that in fact it's actually an opportunity, right, for people that who wanted to do healthcare or health tech or whatever, right? Because why? If you say that it is a closely knitted, or even some says that it's closed off, wow, I will look at it and say that wonderful, this is going to be the barrier of entry. If the barrier of entry is high, that means that if I'm able to break it in, wow, I'm in the community, people can't get in so easily. I still have my runway to do my things. If you go in where there's this industry where everybody are able to rush in, then believe me, I tell you, you are going to be a Me Too kind of things. Nobody will care about you. You can't raise money. You can't do a lot of things. So relook at this question. I believe that, in Chinese we call there's 危机, but there's also 机会. What do I mean by that? If there is a issue that or a risk there, but there's also a glimpse of opportunity that we can talk about it. So don't see that, yes, it's totally right that what Jeremy mentioned. Hey, believe me, when you deal with clinicians, these are not a pool of very friendly. They do patient care, they are friendly, but when you do about business, they are not friendly at all. Believe me, because it's not easy to talk to them. They will tell you that, hey, come on, I'm the one who knows better than you. You give me a solution. No, this solution doesn't look nice. They will sure tell you no first before they say yes. Believe me, we have been looking, I have been looking at so many healthcare innovation applicants. It has to be run through clinicians, and then clinicians must nod their head and say that yes, like, you have to pray and pray to God and pray to them, that kind of things. Wow, it's crazy. A lot of people will start to complain, and that's why we say that it's too many complexity in terms of healthcare, right? But as I keep on mentioning here, is that if you're able to break through, you're able to find the correct person, you talk to them, you're able to break through it, bingo, you are there. And stay on, no matter how difficult, stay on, work with them, develop the relationship, and there you go, right? You will make sure that that's something that you can do, right? So don't treat that this is a very complex, yes, it's complex, but don't say that it is complex, just that. Look at it to say that with this complexity, there's seriously good opportunity that you can get it. Yep.
Oh, I totally agree to the fact that, the key, one of the keys to success is really, not taking the easy way out, but to really to take the path less traveled in a sense. I am mindful of the time, so it's already 10:59. Perhaps we can, I would like to go on forever if you can. But just to sum up today's session, titled The Future of Health Tech, right? To the panelists, maybe perhaps in one sentence, how will you describe, the future of health tech? Yeah.
Okay, probably I start first since I've been at NHIC. I always believe that the future is bright, even though a lot of people will say that, wow, I know it's tough, there's so many people already doing that, how can I keep on brainstorming new ideas, but seriously, there's lots of problems, as we mentioned, like Zubin mentioned, look at the problems, there's lots of problems that you have to solve. Right? If there's no problem, then we are living in a perfect world. We are not perfect. We are not living in a perfect world. So give yourself, the future of healthcare is really there for each of us to contribute and work together, This is a very motherhood kind of general statement that hopefully, to give a good glimpse that everybody are optimistic about it. So I'm optimistic of what the future of healthcare is, and I look forward the kind of new innovation and the adoption of this thing in our healthcare, so that the real benefits will be our patient, right? That's where health is wealth. That's where I come from. Yeah, thanks.
I would just say it's exciting, but we're only at the tip of the iceberg.
Thanks, Dr. Zubin. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just close off by saying that the future is very, very, very bright, but bring your own batteries.
Yep. Okay. Thanks so much. And with that, we'll end off the session. Thank you once again for taking time off to really join us on this Wednesday morning. And to the participants and audience, I hope you all really had some insights and some great takeaways from this discussion, because I definitely have. With that, I'll just end the session. Thanks for joining.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.